Alright, welcome back everyone to my channel. Thanks so much for tuning in and having a watch today. I hope you all have been having a great week so far and that you find this video to be helpful. As you guys may have realized, my upload schedule is being a little bit switched up right now while I'm in surgery, so from now on to the end of this rotation, you can expect my videos to come more midweek, Tuesday, Wednesday, as opposed to Saturday, Sunday. So as you guys can see from the title of this video, today we're going to be talking about all of the things that you should be considering when you are doing your research and applying to Caribbean medical schools. Now this has got to be one of the most frequently asked questions that I have from you guys either in email or in my direct messages. People are always asking me about certain schools and what I know about them, and asking me about how I would rank one school compared to another, or what they should consider when they're making their pro and con list for certain Caribbean medical schools. And if you are one of those people who has already emailed me, you will likely know that one of the things that I always respond with is this great blog post by a family physician who is now practicing medicine. He is a graduate of AUC and he has a wonderful blog, and it is called CaribbeanMedStudent.com. I will link it below. But one of the things that I always forward to people when they ask me about their process in researching Caribbean medical schools is this specific post that he made all about ranking Caribbean medical schools and the information he has on what he thinks that you should consider during your application process. And I have found this to be an extremely useful resource, so I am basing this video largely off of the content that he provides in that blog post, and I'm not going to go into every detail because I want you guys to go check it out for yourself and support him. His name is Dr. Benjamin Ho. But I am going to elaborate a little bit more and add in some of the things that I also think are relevant when applying for your medical school, and just finding out in general where it is that you are going to complete your medical education. Now, with all of that being said, let's just jump right into the first tip that I have for you when it comes to researching a Caribbean medical school. So the first thing is pretty straightforward, but you have to make sure that the school you're going to attend is accredited in the United States. That is, of course, if you are planning to practice medicine in the United States when you graduate. And in the US, the main accrediting bodies for foreign medical schools are ECFMG, I'll link that below, and that is kind of governed by the NCFMEA, again, which I will link down below. Now, attending an accredited school is obviously important because that means that you will be eligible to sit, first of all, the USMLE licensing exams, and once you have taken the USMLE Step 1, Step 2, and Step 3, and you complete your residency, or you've graduated medical school, it means that you will actually be able to get licensed to practice as a physician in the United States. So you technically can attend medical school and graduate medical school, be an MD, but not be allowed to practice in the United States because you attended a school that does not meet the criteria for these accrediting bodies to give you a license once you're done with all of your training. Now, the next thing you want to consider is whether or not the school is New York or California approved or disapproved. So there are about 10 to 15 US states that require a separate approval for medical students and graduates of certain medical schools to actually practice or do rotations and ultimately get licensed in that state. And you can be approved in New York but not be approved in California. And if you are approved in California, typically you're going to be approved for all 50 states. And this is because there are just a number of states that follow the same criteria and guidelines for accreditation that California does. If your school is not accredited in California or New York, that's fine. It's not the be-all, end-all of considerations, but it factors into your research process because you can still apply for residency and you can still do your clerkships in about 30 other states. But it just means that if you ultimately want to move back to where you're from and you're not accredited to practice there, then that's just going to make things more difficult for you as far as your future practice as a physician. And then just tacking on to that, if your school is disapproved by New York or disapproved by California, that means that there is no chance in the near future that you will ever be able to practice medicine in those states. So it's better for your school to just not be approved yet as opposed to disapproved, because this means that in the future, as you go through medical school, your school may get to the point where they actually apply to the state to become accredited for their graduates to be able to practice, and there is hope for you actually to one day be qualified in all 50 states or in the state of New York, for example. All right, so the third thing that you want to consider in your research process is, are students attending X school eligible to receive Title IV federal student loans? And not all Caribbean medical schools meet the criteria put out by the U.S. Department of Education to be able to give their students qualification to get financial loans from the government. And this is really essential information to have, because you have to have your ducks in order before going to medical school, because you're gonna have to pay for tuition, rent, flights to and from the island. You're gonna be living in the Caribbean, but there are vacations, you're likely gonna go home, textbooks, and then all the other costs associated with living. So if you can't get financial loans from the government, then you're either gonna have to pay out of pocket or take out a line of credit, borrow money from family, or just figure out something so that you can actually pay for school once you're accepted. So now I'm gonna tack on two other things that I think are important to consider in your research process. Again, this kind of deviates from Dr. Ho's blog post, but something that he does say I totally agree with. I think that those three things, national accreditation, state accreditation, and being able to get student loans, are the three big things that should be deal breakers for you. Those are the things you want to hone in on, number one, in your research process, to make sure that they hit all of those benchmarks for you, especially if you want to practice in certain areas of the United States. Of course, there are going to be other things that come into play when you're making your pro and con list, or let's say you've been accepted to a couple of schools and you're trying to decide which one. These things I think are worth knowing, but shouldn't be deal breakers in the process for you as you learn more about these schools. And so the first thing in this kind of subcategory that I would recommend finding out would be, what is the school's policy regarding step 1 and moving from second year into third year? So each Caribbean medical school kind of has their own process for determining whether or not a student is eligible to move from third year or second year to third year, like I just mentioned. And some schools require you to take the step 1 before you start your clerkships. Other schools will allow you to start your clinical rotations without actually having taken the step 1 exam. Now, what I want to draw your attention to is that most Caribbean schools will require you to take a comprehensive pre-qualifying exam before you're actually eligible to sit for the USMLE exam. And this is called the NBME CBSE. I've made a video about it. I will put that above right now. So what you should know beforehand is how many attempts a student will have to take and fail and retake the comprehensive exam before being dismissed from the school. So some schools allow students to take the comp exam as many times as they need before they pass, and then they can take step 1. Other schools will only allow 2 to 3 attempts at the comp exam, and if you fail those attempts, then you will be expelled from the school and you will not be allowed to apply again, and all the time and the money that you put into medical school will all be for nothing, at least at that point. Now, of course, every student before enrolling in medical school should go in with the intention of passing all of their exams and doing well and being able to pass their comprehensive exam on the first or second try, but the reality is that this just often isn't the case, especially for students attending Caribbean schools that are not the top 4 Caribbean medical schools. Now again, this shouldn't be a deal breaker, but it's important to know from day 1 of your sort of application process that you need to be studying and putting the time in so that when it comes to the end of second year and you have to take that comp exam, that if you don't study and you slack off, that all of this time and money is going to go to waste. And again, this should really be common sense, but unfortunately, a lot of students applying for Caribbean medical schools aren't really serious about actually practicing medicine and tend to slack off. And even if you aren't slacking off, the comp is a pretty difficult exam. If you've seen my videos in the past, I had a very hard time passing that exam, but you won't even get the chance to sit for the USMLE and even get a chance to fail the USMLE, let alone pass it, if you can't pass that comp exam, because you'll be kicked out of your school. Now, on a lighter note, the last thing that I would recommend considering would be to figure out where you are going to be doing your clerkships. So the biggest thing is, are all of your clerkships in the United States? And this is important because residency programs and the people interviewing you during the residency application process want to see that you have had some clinical experience with and you've had time practicing in the American hospital system, and you know the general standardized practices and rules and regulations, so that when you actually start working with them, it's not like you're moving from a completely different system into this new foreign system that you don't know anything about. Now, because this video is geared to Caribbean students, chances are the majority of your rotations are going to be in the United States. But for those of you watching who aren't looking into Caribbean medical schools, that's a different process. If you're from a medical school abroad, then of course you want to look at least getting a couple of rotations in the United States, but you're likely not going to be able to get your full 2 years worth. So then on top of that, it's worth finding out from your school if all of your core rotations and all of your elective rotations are going to be completed in the same city or state, or do they have affiliated hospitals dotted throughout the country so that you can get some experience in different areas or do away rotations if that's something that interests you. And again, this shouldn't be a deal breaker, but it's just something worth knowing when you're going through the pros and cons of the different schools that you are looking into. Alright, so that brings me to the end of today's video. I hope you guys found this to be useful and that you implement some of these ideas into your research process as you go through and choose which schools you're thinking of applying to. And I really would recommend checking out Dr. Ho's blog. Again, I'll link that below. It really has a lot of great resources for you whether you're applying to medical school or you're already enrolled. And if you guys have any questions or concerns, or by all means corrections to any of the information that I gave in this video, just shoot me an email, a message, or leave a comment down below and I will definitely respond. So thanks so much for watching, and I will see you guys in my next video. Have a good one. Bye.